Hi, everyone. My name is Natalia, and I'm a chapter leader of Travel Massive Hoi An and Da Nang, and I'm also a co-founder of Secreted Experiences. So our chapter has been organizing a series of online workshops for this year. The goal of these workshops is to support travel industry professionals during this hard time of crisis and help them learn different skills and also improve their existing skills. We previously hosted workshops on digital marketing, on Google Analytics, on travel photography. If you did not join them before, you can always watch the recordings of them on Travel Massive website. They're still available and will be probably forever. This time, we decided to focus on professional travel writing. And this workshop will be for both tourism professionals who want to learn how to create the content by themselves, and also for independent travel writers who want to improve their skills. But before we start, please message us in the chat box where you're joining us from. And well, if you're watching us on the Travel Massive website, you can use the live chat box. If you're watching us on YouTube or on Facebook, you can just use the comment box. Please, we want to know, because I saw there were a lot of people registered from various parts of the world, and it's very exciting. I hope all of you could make it. In case you want to rewatch this workshop later, there will be a recording available on the Travel Massive website, or in case you want to share it with someone as well, no problem, you can see it again. Also, I want to say a separate thank you for those people who supported us with a donation. It's actually very helpful for our chapter. In this way, we can make sure we can grow and create more useful events for Travel Massive members in the future. Meanwhile, well, let me introduce our guest speaker today. Today, we invited an expert travel writer, a travel journalist, Katie Lockhart. Katie is a travel and food journalist, copywriter, and content creator traveling full-time around Asia. She writes for National Geographic, Travel and Leisure, Condé Nast Traveler, Rob Report, and many more. Later, I'll share her contact details here in the chat box, so you can follow her on Travel Massive, on her Instagram, and just see her website as well. Katie is a member of Travel Massive New York chapter, but luckily for us, she has been stranded in Hoi An for the past 10 months. That's why today she's speaking as a part of our chapter. And Katie today will be talking about how to get inspired, how to find your travel writing style, how to grab your reader's attention, what to focus on when writing about your travel products, how to create the best headlines, and what to do about writer's block. At the end of her presentation, Katie will also share a very important advice for writers so they can succeed. So please make sure you stay with us until then and hear it if you don't want to miss it. Also, at the end of our workshop, we will have a Q&A session. So please feel free to leave any questions you have in the chat box or in the comments, or depending again where you're watching us. Well, and now I'm going to give a word to Katie. Katie, over to you.
Hello, hey guys. Thanks very much for taking the time out of your days to tune in and listen to me talk about travel writing. So as Natalia mentioned, I'm a digital nomad, and my partner and I have been traveling around Asia for 2.5 years now. So one of the biggest questions that I get asked all the time is, what do you do for work? How are you able to do this? So I'm just going to give you a little bit of my history first. I moved to New York when I was 18 to go to college and study journalism there. And while I was in college, I interned at Harper's Bazaar and Good Housekeeping magazines, as well as at Nickelodeon and MTV, which are both Viacom TV channels. And so after college, I got a job at Viacom. I was a digital producer for RuPaul's Drag Race, and also a copywriter for the show, as well as some other Viacom shows. So it was really, really fun, and I loved that experience, but I also kind of thought, I wasn't entirely happy with the pace of my life and the pace of my career. It was so stressful and very intense. So I really wanted to get back into kind of my original focus of being a journalist and being a travel writer and a food writer. And so it kind of became my side hustle for a year before I quit my job and went full time. It was really important for me, and I'm sure for a lot of bloggers and travel writers and travel business owners who are just starting out. You kind of have to juggle a full-time job at first, and you have to work on your side hustle when you're not working. So I did the same thing for about a year, and once I felt confident that I had, built up enough of a nest egg, that I had developed enough editor contacts, and I had written enough articles, I left my job and then left New York and moved to Asia. So, like Natalia said, I've been happily stuck in Hoi An in Vietnam here for 10 months, which has given me a really great opportunity to travel around and also to write about the destination. So for US people, I'm just going to share my screen with you quickly. For US people, if you are, go to a bookstore or whatever, you can get the November issue of Condé Nast Traveler, and I wrote a piece, A Perfect Place for a Long Stay, in their Reader's Choice issue. So they chose Vietnam as the #9 country in the world. And so they asked me to write a piece to accompany it. And also for people in the UK who are watching right now, if you want to go to the bookstore and get Condé Nast Traveler UK, I wrote a piece for them about, it's called Daechu, which is a hotel here in Hoi An by the beach. And so they asked me to write a piece about that for their roundup of affordable places to stay. So yeah, and let me just switch back here. So I'm of course a travel and food journalist, but I'm also a copywriter and a content writer for a variety of different travel companies around the world, like different tour companies, different hotel companies, and travel advisors, and luxury products like spirits. So many travel writers do this on the side as well. Copywriting and content writing gives us better pay, but it gives us some income stability that freelancing doesn't offer. And because there is such a wide variety of travel professionals signed up today, I'm going to be talking about travel writing for magazines and publications, and as well as writing for travel companies. And yeah, of course, keep any questions that you have. There'll be a Q&A at the end. And I'm just going to share my screen with you guys again. And if you'd like to follow me on Instagram, you can see also there's a link in my bio that goes to my website. So you can view my portfolio, which looks like this, and you can view all the different articles I've written and the different publications I work with, as well as my content and copywriting tab. So let's get started. I think the first thing I want to talk about is inspiration, and I know that everyone is struggling with this right now. And has been struggling for the past 6 months because, with the pandemic, with the election, it's just been very, very difficult to stay focused and to find inspiration for travel because, we can't really travel. So I'm a firm believer that you have to be a good reader to be a good writer. So, to get in the mood to write, to get inspired, read travel articles, read travel blogs, or just read a book, to be honest. It doesn't have to be a travel book. It can be anything. As a kid, I was a super voracious reader, and I think that's the reason why I'm a writer today. I also find that when I read a lot, my writing flows much easier and much more naturally. And it's just easier to write in general. So I highly recommend, if you're feeling stuck, to start reading some travel blogs or some travel websites. I find these stories through my colleagues' articles that they post on their Twitter or they post on LinkedIn, or in the byline brag section of the Facebook writing groups I'm a part of. And also just scroll through the major pubs like CNT, Travel and Leisure, Nat Geo for inspiration. And that also gives writers a really good idea of the types of stories that those publications are publishing right now and the types of stories that they're looking for. So you can kind of keep that in mind for when you want to pitch them. And this also has a lot to do with writer's block. So like in high school, when you had a huge paper due and you just kept putting it off and putting it off and putting it off, and then you finally sat down to do it and you were like, oh, that really wasn't so bad. So that's what writing can be like a lot of the time. It's really just like you've built it up in your head to be much worse than it actually is. And it's just a mental game. So sometimes you do just have to sit down and force yourself to write. It helps to move to a new location. So that might be a new desk in your house, or, it might be you might be able to go to the cafe and order a coffee and sit down and write. Another thing that a lot of writers are doing now is they're setting like 30-minute timers. So set a timer for 30 minutes, write as much as you can. Once that 30 minutes is up, get up, walk around, get a coffee, and then come back and do it again until you have a draft. And once you have a draft, leave it for the day, come back tomorrow, and you might be in a better headspace for that time. And if you're really, really struggling, you can also bribe yourself. So, set a timer. When it goes off, you're like, okay, great, I'm going to have this piece of chocolate, or okay, I'm going to go watch an episode on Netflix, and then come back and do it again until you have a draft. So that's something that I have definitely done during the past 6 months. And for people who aren't professional writers, who maybe don't have the budget to hire a copywriter or content writer to help you create content, it can be really difficult to find a voice. So the first step in kind of figuring out your voice is figuring out the tone of your brand. So is your company for millennials who love memes and who love slang, or boomers who are more used to a formal, informational kind of tone? So is your company's vibe, putting out inspirational travel content, or are you putting out informative how-tos and guides and service pieces? So that's something you need to think about first before you even think about writing. That's going to decide the language, the tone, and the style for which you start to write your content. And when it comes to travel journalists, you just want to adapt your style and the style of your pitches to the publications you're writing for. So you do that just by reading the articles that are on their website, seeing what they've already published, and then you can kind of work from there and figure out what kind of content that they're looking for. And so talking about tone, I'm going to share with you guys here an article that I wrote for, so this is an article I wrote for Kimpton Hotels. They opened up a new Kuala Lumpur hotel, and they know that I'm in the area, so they asked me to write about Kuala Lumpur. So this article is coolest things to do in Kuala Lumpur. And it says, Malaysia is a melting pot of Malay, Chinese, and Indian cultures. To say the food here is good is like saying that KL has a couple of tall buildings. The city has tons of tasty options, from night markets to chic eateries. Here are some of the best. So just looking at this from a tone perspective, you can tell that it's very informal. Part of their branding is they want it to read like you're talking to a friend. So using words like tons of tasty options, like that's pretty relaxed, as well as referring to it as KL, that's pretty relaxed. So these are just small things that you want to think about when you're trying to figure out your tone, and then when you're trying to pick out a style to write about. And of course, for a young brand like Kimpton, they are millennial focused, and they're trendy and cool. So they really wanted to reflect that in their blog posts. And let's see here. So what to focus on when you're writing about travel products. And this is something that journalists definitely struggle with. So how do you kind of seamlessly incorporate tours and hotels and restaurants you've been to into your writing? And I think for travel companies, the key is to cater to your demographic. Everything you write and include in your articles or in your blog posts or in your social copy has to appeal to your target audience, right? So if your target audience is a solo female backpacker, you're not going to suggest, a stay at the Mandarin Oriental Singapore or like a couple's retreat in Maldives. You really want to think about who you're writing for. And I think that's really important. And I think when it comes to content marketing and copywriting, a lot of people have a tendency to put their own personal likes and their dislikes into the copy. And they just kind of forget about their demographic. So that's something that needs to be on the forefront. And then for journalists and for bloggers, I mean, in your writing, you're telling a story and you're taking the reader on a trip with you, right? So you want to inspire them. And to an extent, this works for travel companies as well. So you want to capture their attention and you want to make them keep reading and kind of weave the tour into, I guess, that broader story that you're trying to tell them. And so my first article that I wrote for National Geographic was about the Maldives. And the National Geographic has like a pretty formal tone. It's, like fact-focused right off the bat. And so, you have to figure out how to incorporate a brand into whatever article. And this one I wrote is called "These Luxury Resorts Want to Save the Maldives." And so let me share the screen so you guys can see what I'm looking at here. All right. So I'm just going to read it. As the world's lowest lying country, a majority of the Maldives' 1,200 islands may be underwater within decades, according to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. In light of this prediction that is out of their control, a handful of the country's luxury resorts still feel it's important to do their part and hope to inspire more action globally. Then a ticket to these high-end resorts won't just be the vacation of a lifetime, but a conscious effort to travel in a more eco-friendly, sustainable way. So as you can tell just by the tone, that's totally different from the Kimpton article that I showed you guys about Kuala Lumpur. Like very fact-based, very informational, and very informative because that's National Geographic's brand. And then we keep going here. One resort group at the forefront of these efforts is Soniva, a luxury hotel company with 2 private islands in the Maldives. A 40-minute seaplane ride takes you to Soniva Fushi in the Ba Atoll, a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve, with chic reclaimed wood bungalows at the edge of the jungle. Soniva's latest venture is Soniva Jani in the Nanu Atoll. The idyllic island holds 25 Robinson Crusoe-style overwater villas and a massive new beach house outfitted with recycled materials and eco-friendly amenities, and so on. So, as you can see for that one, it's kind of like you're talking about an overarching theme, which would be sustainability in the Maldives. And that's how you want to incorporate a hotel in, So that's the unique angle that a publication is looking for is, okay, this hotel is incredible and it's beautiful and it's a great honeymoon destination, right? But ultimately, it has to be a little bit more interesting than that. And so that's how you can work it in, and hotel reviews are super, super hard to place. That's always a question that travel writers have is, I visited an amazing hotel, how can I work it in, or how can I write about it? So looking for those unique angles that the hotel offers is a great way to do that. And it's likely that, if you have a tour company, a travel company, it's much easier to work in hotels, restaurants, tours, because you're writing more of like a how-to guides, more of the best kind of listicle articles where it seems very natural to work in those things. And then we're also going to talk about headlines. So headlines are super, super tricky. They're something that I struggle with and have struggled with all the time as long as I've been writing. And as a journalist, I actually find that 9 out of 10 times my editor will choose their own headline, out of my control. I'll give them a headline, of course, but they always change it to something that they want it to be, or a larger goal that they have as a brand or a company, and that's fine. And for bloggers and for people running businesses, the headline is super important because it really needs to make people want to click through and read. So for businesses, the trick is incorporating your SEO keyword research into the headline. And then, of course, you incorporate that keyword into the lead and throughout the article wherever you can, wherever it reads natural. So I do my SEO research with just Google keywords as well as Moz. Moz Academy is a really good tool. And for those who, maybe during this time have had to transition into creating their own content for their company, but they don't understand SEO and they don't know the basics, Moz Academy is a great way. They have different courses that they offer, and from just basics to like becoming an expert. So I can recommend looking into them. And the challenge with SEO and SEO keywords is making the headline interesting enough to click through, because SEO keywords are kind of make things bland. But what I would do is I would do a brainstorm and I'd write, every idea I have down on a piece of paper, and then you come back later and you select your favorite from that, because I love to come back to my writing later on, because I always just find that it reads fresher. You're not thinking about it anymore, and it becomes pretty obvious which one you think is the best headline or what you think is the best sentence. And so for headlines, successful ones that get the reader's attention, that get them to click through, but also have those SEO keywords, just some really generic examples here are like how to save money while traveling, tips for spending less money and eating more in Taiwan, the ultimate guide for where to eat in Barcelona, 10 incredible ways to travel from home in 2020. So they're a little bit bland, but they are going to hit well with SEO, and those are things you need to keep in mind if you're creating a headline for a blog or for a travel company. Less so if you're a journalist, because your editor is going to change it anyway. And that leads into leads, which lead is the first paragraph of an article, or we call it graph, a GRAF. And again, this is something that a lot of writers struggle with, because it has the same characteristics as a headline. It needs to draw people in. When people have such a short attention span nowadays, you really do have to work harder to make them want to keep reading. So this is something that I struggle with as well. And sometimes it comes to you when you're thinking of the article to pitch to your editor, or other times, you need some inspiration, which I often find that I do. And what I do is I select a handful of different articles from the publication that I'm writing for. So if I'm writing an article for Travel and Leisure, I'll go through Travel and Leisure and I'll select maybe 4 or 5 articles that they've recently published that are similar to the one I'm going to write for them. Sometimes I select the articles that my editor wrote, so that I know what their style is and how they like to write a lead. So that gives me a lot of different ideas about how to write leads. And of course, you're going to formulate your own from that. But it's just some good inspiration to be like, oh, I didn't think about that. Okay, this is a good way to start it off. And for more straightforward kind of reporting pieces, sometimes they start with a question to get the readers thinking. For editorial pieces, I really like to start mine by painting a very vivid picture that incorporates people's, kind of senses, or maybe it incorporates their memories. And I'm just going to share my screen again with you guys to show you an example of what I'm talking about here. Okay. So this is an article I wrote for Rachel Ray's digital magazine. It's about cookie artists, which is a growing trend in the US. So it says, gooey chocolate, warm buttery dough, and that sweet sugary smell. Is your mouth watering yet? So it has both of those aspects of what I was talking about when you're writing a lead. It has where you're kind of visualizing and you're imagining what this chocolate chip cookie tastes like. And it's also asking you a question. And then it goes on to say, Americans have a thing for cookies, especially chocolate chip. According to Yankee magazine, around 7 billion chocolate chip cookies are eaten every year in the US. So that's a big number, and it's kind of an interesting way to start because you're incorporating you're incorporating kind of a feeling and a sensation, but you're also giving them some facts as well. And so the next article that I'm going to share with you guys I wrote is for Smithsonian Magazine's travel section. And the title is "See How Artists Have Turned Farm Silos into Stunning Giant Murals." All right. Okay, hopefully you guys can see this one. Cool. So it says, "It's a hot day in Pingrip as the red sand of Western Australia dances across the pavement. A welcome sign reading, 'Small town, lots of spirit,' greets visitors as they enter the rural lakeside town, population 264. But until 2018, not many tourists have made the 4-hour drive from Perth. There wasn't any reason to venture to Pingrip. Then 3 silos near the center of this tiny town were transformed into giant works of art." So it kind of gives you that idea of Western Australia, the outback, and that kind of red sand. And you can imagine this sort of like dusty little town that you're entering in, and you see these huge grain silos. And it's just about like the murals that were created there in an effort to get more tourists out there. And so that's kind of all I have for you guys for leads. And of course, if you have any questions, please formulate them and you can ask them at the end. And something I want to talk about that is super important when it comes to travel writing right now is racism and colonialization in travel writing. And I sort of feel it's irresponsible to be leading a talk about travel writing today and not bringing this subject up. And we've seen a lot more discussion about this in 2020, which has been a long time coming because as many of you know, the industry is overwhelmingly white. And when it comes to our writing, and how we write about people, how we write about places, food, and even architecture, it's really important to be aware of your racial biases and how that comes through in your writing. This is something I'm working on myself all the time. I'm learning new things all the time, but there's a lot of amazing resources that I can share with you on this. And I'm going to share my screen again. Hopefully this works. And of course, I can share these resources at any time. You can reach out to me. Okay. Cool. So here's the first one here. This is a new one that came out. You can go to sheswonderful.com. It's an equity toolkit. And if you have a piece of paper or a pen, you can just write this information down. And of course, I can provide you with it later, as I said. So these are just, they have a new anti-oppression toolkit for travel and culture creators. Another one is this, you can subscribe, it's a subscribe page for unpacking media biases. So of course, these unconscious biases that we have across the media, and you'll just get a bi-weekly email with things that you can do and things to think about. Here's an article written by my friend Lola on challenging the Western gaze in travel writing. And these are great. Sometimes I keep these articles up where if I'm writing an article about someone or something that's not within my own culture, these are great to read before and after to make sure that your biases are checked. And another one is Getting Real About Decolonizing Travel Culture, written by Bonnie Amore. And this is on her Medium account, or their Medium account, excuse me. And let's see. So Bonnie is a really great, they are a travel writer, and they host decolonizing travel writing seminars, and they sell out very quickly. So be on the lookout for when they are hosting the next one. They typically announce it on their social media. And you can follow them on Twitter, Bonnie Amore, or on Instagram. And I also, someone else to follow on Instagram is the Black Travel Alliance, which is a new initiative and organization to follow and to kind of see they're holding brands accountable for the statements that they made a few months ago and showing their support for Black Lives Matter. And as something that we can do as travel writers and bloggers also is, in the future, when you're asked on a travel press trip or a fam trip or whatever, ask whoever's organizing it about the diversity of the people attending. I've been on dozens and dozens of press trips, and I think I've only been on one with one Black person. So it's really important that we now should be holding these companies and these destinations more accountable. So if you can't go on a trip, maybe send them the contact of a person of color in the industry that you know well, who might be interested in going on the trip. Now is sort of like the advice section, the biggest kind of advice that I have for travel writers. Something I find a lot of travel writers saying is, oh, I have a list of my dream publications. This year I'm going to pitch them. And I say just pitch them right now. Don't wait. I've always pitched the big mags from day one, like Travel and Leisure, Condé Nast, New York Times. It doesn't really matter how many clips you have in your portfolio. Of course, travel writers, a lot of people have imposter syndrome. I do too, but it doesn't matter how many clips you have or who you've written for. What matters is if you have a good pitch and if they're interested in your pitch and if they want to commission it. So don't be afraid to pitch the big mags because you think you're not good enough. The worst thing that's going to happen is they're going to say no, or they're just not going to respond to your email. 3 months into my career as a full-time travel writer, I wrote an article for the New York Times. So don't stress about that stuff. And another big tip I have for travel writers is always ask for more money. So when editors commission a piece from you, they'll say, oh, can you do it for 500? Rate is 150. So ask for more money because they expect you to. They really do. That's the advice I get from editors on Twitter all the time, is they do expect you to negotiate with them. Even if you do think that the rate is fair, ask for more money. You might get $50 more, you might get $25 more. But it's definitely not like a taboo thing to do. And of course, a lot of female writers don't feel comfortable doing this, but 100% do it. And again, the worst thing that's going to happen is they're going to say, no, I'm sorry, we can't, offer you any more money. Are you still interested in writing the piece? Which happens to me often. And I say yes, or sometimes I say no. I think those are all the major tips I have right now. Does anyone have any questions? Q&A time?
Thank you, Katie. That was great. I'm sure lots of people found it useful. It's a really cool speech. I love the examples and that you also focused on the diversity. That was really cool. I'm sure lots of people also found your advice really helpful. We do have a few questions, but before I ask them, I actually wanted to, because there were a few people who mentioned where they were joining us from. So I want to say hi to Tokyo, Sofia, Paris, Tasmania, France, Turkey, South Africa, India, Belgium, Barcelona, Australia, more from South Africa, Portugal. Yeah, so we had quite a few people watching us and still are watching. We have several questions here and they're coming. More questions are coming. So I'll start asking you. First question is from Maria. She's asking, any tips for landing a freelance travel writing job at the moment? Can you just pitch different publication with a one-time or long-term offer? Do you directly send the article or just pitch the idea first before writing it?
Okay, so I'll sort of break those down.
Yeah,
so the first question.
In one. Sorry.
Yeah, so first question, the last question, I never send a full article. I never write a full article. I only send pitches, which is a pitch. Your pitch should have a headline, like an example headline that will grab the editor's attention. And then it will have, 3 to 4 sentences maximum about what you want to write about and any sources you might have for your article, and why it's important now, and why you think it's a good fit for the publication you're pitching. What were the other 2, Natalia? Oh, I think you're muted. Can you?
My fault, I was muted.
That's okay.
Yeah, so 2 other questions were, can you just pitch different different publications with a one-time or long-term offer? And then the other part was, do you directly send the article or just pitch the idea first before writing it?
Yeah, you definitely just send the pitch first before writing it. Some publications will ask you to write on spec, which means they'll ask you to submit the full article before they agree to commission it. So what happens with that is you could write the full article, they read it and they say, sorry, we don't need it, we don't want it, whatever. I never, ever agree to do that, because to me, it's like you're writing for free, and I don't write for free. So the other question is, that's not quite how it works with travel publications. So if you want to write for Nat Geo or something, so you just send them a pitch, like I had just discussed, a headline and a few sentences. To become, like, if you want to be a content creator or a copywriter for a brand, that is a bit of a different process. It's kind of like you're pitching, but you're pitching yourself to people. I get in contact with people through LinkedIn. So I connect with them on LinkedIn, and then, we sort of have a conversation, brief conversation about their business. And then I sort of pitch them and about me as a content writer. And we either schedule a phone call to chat further, or we don't. And that's how that works. Otherwise, any kind of more full-time, non-freelance work would be on companies' websites that you could apply to.
Thanks, Katie. Well, we have more questions. The next one is from Milda Urban. Hi, Katie. Do you write about destinations, locations you've traveled to in the past retroactively, or only the places you are currently in?
Oh, definitely retroactively. As far as I'm concerned, if you've been there within like 5 years, it's fair game. Being based in one place, like Vietnam, gives me a really great opportunity to write about the location more in depth. But I've been to the Maldives 3 or 4 times. I can write about that anytime. I've been to spent 3 months in Japan last year, so I'll write about Japan now. And there are also a lot of ideas that I get while I'm traveling that I write down in little notes, where I'm like, oh, I'd love to pitch this idea, for example. Well, I don't want to say it because I don't want anyone to steal it, but it's about Tokyo. And so, I'm not in Tokyo right now, but I still want to pitch that because I think it's a great idea. At the time, the publications I pitched didn't pick it up because, it wasn't a good fit for them then, but I'll keep pitching.
And I guess it makes a lot of sense because nowadays not many people can travel. But, well, if you're a travel writer, you have to produce the content somehow. So, well, you probably have to write about where you traveled before.
Exactly. And you can write about where you're from. You can be pretty versatile.
Right. The next question is from Ian. He's asking, how do you balance writing for conversion or keywords and writing for purpose or knowledge? For example, top 10 hotels in Tasmania vs the indigenous history of Tasmania.
Sorry, can you just repeat the last part?
So he gave the example of two headlines. First one is top 10 hotels in Tasmania, and the second one is the indigenous history of Tasmania.
So those are really different headlines. Is there a way that you can kind of combine the two? I know in Tasmania, well, there's actually not tons of Indigenous hotels in Tasmania right now. But, you know, you can kind of combine the two to make it more like, let's see, top 10 hotels in Tasmania, the Indigenous history of Tasmania. So top 10 ways to experience the Indigenous history of Tasmania. Things like that, or top 10 places, top 10 stays to experience the Indigenous history of Tasmania. So you can combine those two, but also everything you write doesn't have to be for SEO as a brand. Some companies just want to do brand work. So I write just articles that will give their customers trust or give their customers more knowledge about the brand. So every single thing you write doesn't have to be super, super SEO focused.
Thanks, Katie. The next question is from Hillary. She's asking, is there a somewhat standard rate for cost or length of article?
No. So there isn't. It depends on the publication. And it depends on what you're willing to write for. So typically I try to stay around 50 cents per word. You know, I've been writing for a few years full time now, and I write for a lot of big publications. But some people are happy with 10 cents a word, and that's fine. It's completely up to you and what you're willing to work for and what you're willing to do with your time. No judgments. You know, but New York Times is $1 a word. Condé Nast Traveler print is $2 a word. But many, many publications right now are really struggling. So a lot of the publications I write for have decreased their rates. And that's probably going to stay that way for a year or two.
Well, so I guess it means you have to be aware as well of what are standard rates of different publications. But I guess if you're in the industry and you're part of the travel writer community, you probably know that, right?
Yeah, definitely. You're kind of aware of who pays well and who pays on time and who pays well and who doesn't pay. So there are different reputations for different publications, and yeah.
Great, thanks. I think we have one more question from Rebecca. Rebecca is asking, is it the done thing to pitch the same thing to a few publications, or once one of them says yes, it is almost then exclusive?
So this is an interesting question because it's quite a contentious question among travel writers. Before the pandemic, it used to be when you send out a pitch, you're only sending out that one pitch to one publication. And then you have to wait until that publication responds to that pitch and says no or says yes before you pitch it to a different publication. And a lot of people believe that that's the right way. Since the pandemic, I've actually stopped doing that because I'm like, I need to make money. Like, I can't be waiting 6 weeks for an editor to get back to me and then they say no. So I do send duplicate pitches, and I think a lot of journalists do that now. And I don't think there's any shame in it. It's sort of like, you got to hustle. And of course, if an editor does get back to you and is like, hey, I want this story, and then another editor gets back to you and says, hey, I want the same story, then you say, listen, I'm so sorry. You know, you sort of choose which one, I guess. And you say, listen, I'm so sorry. And then you offer them a different angle on that story. So you offer them I'm already writing this story, but are you interested in, you know, maybe changing it up to be talking about this more than that, you know? So you can offer them a different angle. But what your question is more focusing on as well is, so once a publication says yes, you write that article for them. But that doesn't mean the topic is exclusive. So they don't own the rights to that topic that you pitched them. They might own the rights to all the words that you wrote for them. So you can't copy anything. You can't use the same quotes. You can't plagiarize any of the same information. You have to have everything be original and be new, but you can absolutely pitch a different topic. You can pitch a different angle that relates to that topic to different publications afterward, yeah.
So maybe that's not a bad thing to actually pitch to several publications simultaneously. You have a higher chance that someone will pick it up.
Exactly. Some writers are like, oh my God, that is such a no-no. Some editors might be like, whatever. You know, it depends what you're comfortable with.
Cool. Let me check if we have any more questions. Yes, we have a couple of more questions.
Sure.
Let me check. Jessica is asking, do you have any general advice for someone just getting started who doesn't have a portfolio, or maybe on their blog as example of writing? Also, do you do your own photography, and would you pitch that too if you did? So it's two questions again in one.
Okay, so first question. So yeah, general advice for getting started. Yeah, it's great to have a blog. It's great, at the end of your email of your pitches to the editor, I typically write, I'm a food and travel writer. Here's my portfolio. So they can have a look. To be honest, I don't know that anyone does click on that. Like I said, pitch the publications you want to pitch. Pitch the publications that you think will be interested in the story that you're pitching. Don't be afraid just because you don't have all these clips from all these publications, or you don't have, you don't have a byline in whatever magazine. Don't worry about that. Just pitch. So yeah, just don't be afraid, because they're interested in your idea. They're not interested in your pedigree. And who doesn't? Also, do you know? So. I don't do my own photography. Typically, publications just use like Shutterstock. They use their own kind of photographs, or they ask for a PR representative. If you're worked with a PR representative for the photo, or if the editors know a PR representative, they'll ask for their contact, or they'll ask for images from them. Say if you're writing for a hotel, they'll just reach out to them and they'll get images sourced directly from the hotel. And some writers do take their own photographs, and editors do ask, can you either source the photographs for us, or do you have your own photographs? And if they do ask for that, ask for money for your photographs. Like I said, we don't work for free. So yeah, ask for money.
Thanks. I see a question from Stacy. I don't clearly understand it, but she was asking, what are your favorite Facebook? She probably means what social media you're following, probably inspiration. I don't know. Stacy, if I didn't understand your question correct, please can you write it again?
Yeah.
But anyway, Katie, can you?
Sure. Yeah, I'm always on my Instagram. I use it also as a portfolio. I post links to my articles that I've written for people to read. And also Twitter is a huge resource for writers. If you follow editors of publications or publications you're interested in, they'll also often do calls for pitches on their Twitter. So they'll say, I'm looking for so-and-so to write something about Hoi An, email me here. So that's a big reason a lot of writers are on Twitter, and I use Facebook only for the Facebook groups I'm in. So I'm in a lot of binders for writers, for travel writers and for food writers. And that's a great way to just know what's going on in the industry, know who people are writing for, ask for contacts. I ask for editor contacts sometimes. I ask for PR contacts. And yeah, it's just a nice way to build a community as well.
Thanks, Katie. And we have one more question from Ian. He's asking, where will the future of travel writing head to in 2021? Any ideas, theories, wishes?
That's tricky. I hope it will become more inclusive. Like I said, travel writing is extremely white, and that needs to end. So I hope it will become more inclusive, and a lot of bylines from other people, from diverse audiences, diverse groups who have different perspectives. And I also think travel writing isn't going away. Once things open up again, once it's safe to travel, there's going to be a massive boom. People are going to want to get out there, so editors are going to want to look for content. And yeah, I think we should be hopeful. I don't think we should. It's not as bleak as it looked in April or March or May.
True. Also, well, a personal example of, well, I'm not a travel writer, but travel writers reach out sometimes to me. And currently, I refocused in-person experiences to online experiences. And I did have a few bloggers and travel writers reaching out, and they are now making like top 10 online experiences you can do. So there is still content. And well, depending on what next year has for us, they'll probably can refocus to different
Right.
content.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone pivots. Pivoting is like the word of 2020. So yeah.
Thanks, Katie. Let me check if there are any more questions. I don't
Sure.
see so far. We still have a few minutes if anyone wants to ask anything. No, I don't see anything yet. Is there anything, Katie, you would like to share with us, or that's it?
I'm looking. I wrote a couple notes down about questions that I get asked a lot. So one of them is, how do you find contact editors info? So the first place to look is on the masthead of a publication, which just basically like the contact info of a publication. And it'll list out all the editors and the editors of each section. And so you can find their names at least. And then you can find the formatting of the company's email, in the contact section, or, LinkedIn is also great. I research a lot of people's names, and typically they'll have their editor contact there, as well as Twitter. Twitter, a lot of editors put their email in their bio. So that's a great way to just find people, to find publications you're looking to pitch. And then another big question I get asked all the time is, how often do you follow up on a pitch? And a lot of writers, they kind of switch between a week to 2 weeks. I follow up every week. If I haven't heard back after like 4 follow-ups, then I just drop it and I don't contact them because they're clearly not interested in the article. But yeah, I follow up every week.
Thanks, Katie. I've got a clarification from Stacy, who was asking about Facebook.
Okay.
She was saying that, because you mentioned that you get a lot of information from Facebook groups, and she asks which ones. So if you could share with her. Maybe a good idea. So anyone who needs this extra information, they can connect with you, and you can always talk about it.
Yeah. There's a bunch of different Facebook groups for writers, depending on your niche. And for travel writers, it's called Travel Binders. For food writers, I think it's called Food Binders, or something about food. I can give it to you if you're interested in that one. And yeah, they're a really great resource, and it definitely builds a sense of community for freelancers.
Yeah, and we always can start a topic on the Travel Massive Lounge, and I'll make sure Katie answers the questions. You can always keep on sending the questions in the chat box later. And there is we have a couple of more questions here. Rachel is asking, what kind of timelines do you give yourself to write and rewrite before you cut the cord?
I've never been one of those people that procrastinates, so I don't have a super difficult time in sticking. Like, I've never missed a deadline, and that's my biggest advice also, is don't ever miss a deadline. It's like the simplest thing ever, and it makes you look crazy unprofessional. So don't miss a deadline. But so yeah, I think the day before I have an article due, I make sure I have a draft. So I make sure I have a full draft written the day before. And then the day of the draft is due, I go back in and I, look at it again. I read it through. I run it through Grammarly to check for anything I might have missed. I run it through plagiarism checkers to check for any potential signs of plagiarism with any quotes I have or any information I have. And I sort of just dot my I's and cross my T's before I submit it. But yeah, a couple hours here and there. I don't work full time. I'm a freelancer, so I can make my own hours, and that's one of the things I wanted. So I don't work 40 hours a week. I just sort of take on what I want, and I pitch as much as I want, and I write as much as I want, and that's it.
What a dream job you have, Katie.
I know, very lucky.
There is one more question from Nina. She's asking, how do you pitch an editor a new idea if they haven't replied to your previous pitch?
Okay, so if they haven't replied to your previous pitch, make sure there's like several weeks, if not 1 month, between when you pitch them again. If you have a great relationship with this editor, you can maybe do it a little bit sooner. And if you have a timely pitch, so if your pitch is time sensitive, make sure that you put the words time sensitive in the subject line so that they answer it and they know. But yeah, wait a while. They get so many, like hundreds of emails a day. So it's likely they won't notice that you're pitching them like super close together, but just better safe than sorry. You don't want to piss off an editor.
Thanks, Katie. And I think our last question for today, and as I mentioned, if people have more questions, they can directly reach out to you. I'm sure you'll be happy to help. The last question is from Ian. Is it true drinking wine can help you write better?
No, it's true drinking wine will make you speak another language better. But no, the last thing I want to do after I'm drinking is start writing. It's like, no, don't do that.
Well, I think that was more of a joke question, but
you never know, honestly. Sometimes people do that.
Yeah, actually, I know some examples of people who explain their drinking by that they needed inspiration for writing, but that's, I think, a different story.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks, Katie. Well, I'm sure everyone who wants to ask more questions will get in touch with you. We shared all your contacts, your Travel Massive, your Instagram. They can find you and connect with you. And on your Travel Massive, there's also LinkedIn. So, but whichever way people want to connect with you, they will. Well, let's see. Maybe once again you can join us in future. It was great to have you here.
Thank you.
Before we finish, I want to do a little announcement for everyone because, well, guys, a lot of you might notice that Travel Massive has just launched a series of social events for the members. The goal of those events is that the members can meet in more informal setting and also interact with each other while participating in different online activities. So as I'm running nowadays an online cocktail experience, I will be organizing several of them this month for different time zones. The dates are actually the 12th, 19th, and 26th of November. So please, I hope to see some of you joining me over a few cocktails. Those activities, at least the ones that I'm organizing, they're free of charge, but feel free to donate whatever you like. So I hope to see you there. And thanks everyone again for joining. You'll find the recording on Travel Massive website and social media afterwards. Well, thanks again, Katie. It was great to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks very much for having me. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.